Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 15th episode of Driver Stories. Wow, 15! This is an exciting one as we talk with pros and cons of technology in trucking and how it relates to safety. It's changing the industry big time, from advanced telematics to dash cameras to automated driving. Today we get the perspective from a driver, Melvin Vogt, as to what he thinks of these big changes in the future of technology in trucking. Let's get started. Welcome back to Driver's Stories. We're pleased today to have a very special guest with us, Melvin Vogt, who works out of our Council Bluffs location here in Omaha, Nebraska.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, so I thought we'd start off the podcast today just kind of going over your background. That usually most people are interested on how you got into trucking and where you started. So where'd you start?
Well, when I was a kid, you see those trucks going down the road. It's all I ever wanted to do. Didn't want to be a rocket scientist or an astronaut or nothing like that. No.
Uh-huh.
And get out there and raise hell on the highway in a big truck.
Was your dad a trucker?
No. He was military, retired military.
Okay.
So.
Which branch?
Air Force. He served 20 years.
Wow. He was out here at Offutt then?
Yes, he was. That's where he started and was up in Minot, North Dakota, and we went to Germany for a few years.
Missile officer?
No, he worked on the planes, mechanic-wise.
Okay.
So.
Wow. So when do you remember seeing your first big truck?
Yeah, I was a kid driving around in the back seat of the car with Mom and seeing those big trucks go by, and you just see this monstrous vehicle alongside of you, and it's rather intriguing.
Yeah. Did you tell your mom, I'm going to do that someday?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, you did?
Oh yeah, I was real clear about it when I was a kid.
And she said, no, you're not.
I'm sure she had other ideas as to what she would prefer I do.
Yeah. Yep. So you went to high school, and did you graduate from high school?
I graduated high school,
okay,
and that was about it. And then I ended up working a couple of local jobs. You work for a restaurant guy, a corner guy he had a barbecue place on the corner, Gino Coca. I started with him, but we still got to drive them trucks. But
yeah.
Once I had a position that I could drive them, that's what I did. And I started driving them early age out there in California, where I grew up.
So you're from California? No,
I'm from here. I just grew up out there.
Okay.
So
do you remember your first job then, driving trucks?
Yeah, it was for a furniture company out in L.A. We drove all over the L.A. area delivering furniture, and one day we had a breakdown with the vehicle, and the only thing they could get was a small box truck, not box truck, but a pup trailer with a two-axle cab, and that was where it started. And he said, I hope you know how to drive it. And well, I'll figure it out. And away we went,
Wow.
But that was back before you had CDL license. It was still chauffeur, and we had to get it moved somehow. So.
Right. So did you have to actually load and unload the furniture?
Oh, yeah. Delivered it to people's homes. And,
yeah. Did you like that?
Loved it. It's a great job.
Really?
Met some very interesting people. Had a lot of fun.
Okay. So then, did you get another job in California, or did you leave California?
No, when I left California, I came back out here to the Midwest, and tried to work a couple of local jobs, but nothing that paid worthwhile.
Okay.
And ended up getting into trucking because that's all what I wanted to do anyways,
Over the road trucking?
Yeah, got into over the road, and that started off. And
driving a sleeper?
Yep. First load I ever hauled was to Brighton, Michigan, Marcon Foods. Had a whole load of frozen vegetables. Now, why in the world I remember that first load, I don't know.
Did they ask you if you'd gone to a truck driving school, or was it, early enough they didn't even bother?
No, I had a chauffeur's license, but because of my age, I didn't grandfather in to automatically transfer over, and they said I didn't have enough verifiable experience, so I had to go to a driving school. So I went to one here in town.
Which one?
The Nebraska Custom Diesel.
Okay.
I went there, got my CDL, and went to work for MCT out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota is where I started.
Wow.
Worked for a guy named Csa. He was
Okay.
the owner-operator that owned the trucks.
Wow. Okay. So then, just out of curiosity, paper logs, right?
Oh yeah, we didn't have all this. Like we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have computers, none of it. You didn't have Qualcomm, anything. So creative writing 101. That's what we learned.
Yeah. I was thinking about that the other day because somebody was talking about it wasn't paper logs, it was something else that's gone electronic. And it's so hard to go back now. You know, it's like when your PeopleNet breaks. I mean, I literally have people that say, "No, I can't go anywhere. You know, I got to wait till my PeopleNet gets fixed."
Imagine if the internet went down.
I know. You wouldn't be able to figure out, oh, it's somebody's GPS. They didn't know how to get from, you know, the old maps. Remember, you'd break out the old maps and you'd plan your route, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And I had a whole box full of city maps, the fold-up city maps,
Okay.
because your random McNally didn't give you a detailed enough look at the city that you had to go into, so you would always buy local maps for the city. I had a whole box full of them for every city around the country that I had to go to so I could find addresses, because people can't give directions. Depending on what part of the country you're in, you're either stuck with a Wawa or a car wash or, you know, something goofy that you're trying to find this landmark for. And, you know, there's a Wawa in every corner and a car wash in every corner in some parts of the country. So, you know.
Yeah, so back when you started, you were on paper logs and paper maps, right?
Mhm.
And no cell phones.
No cell phones. Oh, no. If you had to make a phone call, you better find a payphone.
Yeah.
And I can remember standing in lines in certain truck stops where they would have 15, 20 payphones outside. And we all had 800 numbers to call dispatch, but you had to wait in line sometimes for an hour to get a hold of dispatch. And if they didn't have something for you right away, then you had to get back in line because you had to call them back in 15, 20 minutes. So you tried to find the shortest line, and, you know, it was all about payphones.
And probably not even any fax machines.
No.
Right.
No.
So the paperwork was all handwritten.
It wasn't so much handwritten. I mean, most of your shippers would have the paperwork there and give you the paperwork, but getting it back and forth to, you know, the company that you work for, there wasn't a lot of that fax thing going on. I mean, most of the time we just put it in a mailbox, and that's how we sent it. It was all put in a mailbox. They'd give you a bunch of envelopes. You'd stick all that stuff in there, and you'd send it off. You know?
And then came out Trip Pack. I remember when Trip Pack came out. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Everybody's looking for the little yellow and black box.
Yes, exactly. So you finish your paperwork. I mean, it's not today, right? Today we get, you know, as soon as you finish your load, you're using that drive axle or, you know, whatever, taking pictures of it and scanning it and sending it, and it's done. It's like within seconds of delivery. But back then, it would be at least a week, right?
I think Trip Pack guaranteed like 3-day delivery or something like that. They had some short period of time as opposed to, you know, your local post office or FedEx or UPS, which cost you more money than Trip Pack. So everybody had a contract with Trip Pack, and that's how we did it.
Yeah. When I worked at Werner, they had a big room, and they had this machine. And that machine had that, it was almost like, you know, a letter opener.
Right.
But it was automatic, and you'd stack these envelopes in this kind of like pillar or whatever, and this little thing would go back and forth opening the envelopes just so people didn't have to do it. I mean, there were thousands. They had 8,000 trucks, right? So it was crazy. It was almost like some manufacturing plant that had gone automatic, and it was an automation of the paperwork,
like an assembly line type of thing. Yeah. Now I know why some of my trips never got through, because it may not have got opened up and rejected and ended up on the floor or something, you know.
Yeah, exactly. When we first started, Josh was doing the rapid log with the paper logs, and it was an OCR reader is what it was called, and you would scan the logs, the paper logs, and would read the graph, and then it would put it up onto the computer for you, and then we would, you know, try to figure out, you know, who was in violation, and it was the only way that we had of auditing logs back then.
I had fun with my logs because it had to be clearly legible. So I learned how to write really, really small, but it was clearly legible as long as you used magnifying glass. Most people would have to use one to figure out where it was. And I went to work for one outfit out in Pennsylvania. And the lady who was in charge of doing logs, she called me in the office one day and said, "Hey, there's a problem. I can't read your logs." I said, well, I can read them just fine. Everything's there. The mileage, it's all correctly filled out, nice and neat. Never had a problem with the DOT except if I messed up myself. Well, I can't read them, so you got to fix this. Okay, I'll fix it. Well, I was out on the road and found one of those big magnifying glasses, square ones with a handle, and I bought it and I took it back in. I said, here's the problem with my logs. It just made her so mad. I wasn't changing the way I was doing it. But,
So you took your first load to Michigan, right?
Brighton, Michigan. Marcon Foods,
yep. And then how long did you stay with them?
Oh, I think I was with MCT for 6 or 7 years.
Oh, a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you liked it?
Yeah. I mean, that's being out on the road. There's just so many amazing things to see and so many places to go. And, as people have asked me, well, don't you get bored after so many years of seeing the same thing? Well, no, it's different time of day, different weather circumstance. You don't always see the same vehicles, different seasons. So it's always something new to see or something that you didn't see last time. So no, you don't get bored.
Yeah. Do you remember your favorite thing that you saw? Or
favorite
most memorable thing?
Well, when I used to stop up in North Bend, Oregon Washington up there off Snoqualmie Pass.
Yeah.
There's a big truck stop up there, TA now. It's up there in the mountains. It's before you go down into the city. And I used to stop up there with the dog and we'd walk off into the woods. And about 1.5 miles into the woods, there was a clearing. It was just all grass, and the elk would come out and eat in that clearing. And we'd sit right there at the tree line and just watch the elk.
Wow.
It was Mother Nature in its purest form right there.
Right.
Never got too close, and the dog never got too far away from me, and we'd just go watch the elk. But go through the desert during the rainy season, in the spring, and see all the beautiful colors of the desert. People, the desert's brown and dead. Well, it is brown, yeah, but there's a time of the year when it's just green and lush and so many different colors.
So all 48 states then?
48 states, Canada, yeah.
Okay.
Borders of Mexico.
Mm-hmm. And mostly dry van?
No, I've done dry van and reefers and flatbeds and step decks and RGNs, pulled oversize.
So what's your favorite?
My favorite? I'd probably say oversized work.
Really?
Yeah.
Because the challenge?
It is very challenging.
Uh-huh.
Everything is different. You never get the same thing on every load. And it's always going to be strapped down different. It's chained down different, different dimensions, dealing with the permits,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The other day we were driving and I pulled up to the intersection, and right beside me there was a driver, and he had triples. And he was going left. And I'm telling you, that guy didn't miss a beat. There would be no way that I could make a left-hand turn and not have that third trailer go into the other lane, but he didn't. It was perfect execution.
You get so used to it when you're in those trucks and you figure out where your lane position is. Now they make it simple, because now every time you get close to the white line or the yellow line, you get this little thing burping in your ear on either side, or something in the dash that says you're following too close. Or we didn't have any of this stuff. We didn't even have automatic trucks. I mean, First truck I ever drove was a 9-speed, had no Jake brake. You figured it out. You learned how to manage things. So it's changed a lot.
Yeah. Not
necessarily for the better, but it has changed a lot.
Yeah. How do you like the little thing that goes beep, beep, beep on the side?
No.
No, you don't like that?
you get numb to it after a while. But one aspect of it too.
Is it loud? Just out of
No,
curiosity.
it's just annoying.
Okay.
It's not like a
But it only does it when you're approaching another lane, right? Without a turn signal on, or how does that work?
If you're weaving in your lane, if you get too close to one line or the other, it'll make noise that'll chatter at you.
Okay.
To let you know that you're getting too close to one side or veering out of your lane.
Does it come through the dash?
There's like a speakers on each side, an audible sound on either side of the truck. So if you're coming too close to the right side, you hear it chatter on the right. On the left, it does the same thing.
But your seat doesn't vibrate?
No, our seats don't vibrate. Thank God. That would...
You get in a rental car, it's the same system in a rental car, right? And you get the same, some of them have the seat that vibrates when you're changing lanes without a turn signal on.
I'll walk. I'm
Okay.
good. No, I don't need a
Okay.
vibrating seat. I'm good. I don't think I need a rental car that bad.
Yeah, so we're talking about the Bendix system. Fusion is
Mm-hmm.
what it's called, and it's the lane. What do they call it? Lane avoidance collision mitigation system,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it'll brake when you get too close,
Or see a shadow.
or or see a shadow, and then it'll beep 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 at you if you move to the right or to the left
Right.
without a turn signal. But if you have the turn signal on, it doesn't beep, right?
It'll still give you an indication. Some of them do, but it depends on how they're set up. If you get a vehicle coming up on your side, some of them are set up to have that, noise indication that there's a vehicle present there to help you avoid the blind spot. Same thing with with the passenger side and the driver's side.
Okay.
So either way, some of them have a little light bar on the column there where the windshield is, and that light will flash red or blink red if there's an object on there. Again, shadow. It'll do it all the time going down the road.
Right.
So, but it's actually a good thing, I think, because it trains you to stay more focused and stay in your lane. You get used to it, it's annoying, you start to block it out, but I think part of blocking that out is just learn to better manage where you're driving in the lane so that you're not hearing it go off on the right or the left or even in front of you. Learn to space yourself better so you're not following too close. So I think it works in that benefit.
Does it, when it brakes, is it immediate?
Oh yeah.
Oh, it is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Especially-
Catches you off guard?
There's times where it does. In my opinion, it's dangerous when it does that.
Right.
And I was told that you can adjust the setting on it so that it's not so sensitive, because there's driving around local, there's times, bright sunny day, you come up on a bridge, that sensor will go off and it will jam the brakes on the truck. Well, that's a good way to get rear-ended.
Right.
There's nothing in front of me. There's no reason for it to be doing that. And if you're not paying attention, it'll slow you down, and yeah, it's immediate.
So when somebody pulls right in front of you, like a lot of passenger cars do,
Mm-hmm.
does it put the brakes on right then too?
No,
Okay.
I haven't had that problem, but then again, nobody's pulled that close in front of me. I got to imagine that if somebody did, it would.
Right.
But the warnings will go off in the dash to say you're following too close, so you got to, back yourself back a little bit, slow down, give yourself more space. But what can you do? Pay attention.
Do you think that it's a good thing? Just out of curiosity.
All in all, yeah, I do.
You do.
I do.
Okay.
Even though it's annoying, I still think it's a good thing. 'Cause I think it makes people better drivers, all in all. Because, like, again, you learn to better manage your lane position without those sensors going off.
Right.
And so you learn to stay in the lines. I mean, there's times where there's an old line on the road and it'll go off, or if you're in a lane that's ending and the lane's going to end, and as soon as you start moving to the right or the left, it goes off because you're crossing over that lane. But I think it does improve drivers' performance overall.
It's hard to measure. So a lot of times some of these things that we do is, insurance driven, right? Insurance come up for your renewal, right? One of the things they ask is, do you have a collision mitigation system installed on the trucks? And if you do, then your insurance rate is X versus Y.
Right.
Right. But sometimes, it's interesting, the whole camera thing, right? The inward versus the outward facing camera. The whole discussion about technology and whether or not it makes you safer is, I think it's kind of sometimes a heated discussion, but it doesn't have a lot of facts to sway one way or the other, I guess. So I think about collision mitigation, right, and the lane avoidance, and yes, it sounds good, but there's really no data that says, yes, this makes us more safe than if you a truck that doesn't have it on there. And it's the same way with inward and outward facing cameras. I mean, everybody that's for the inward facing cameras, right, says, oh, it's, your safety scores will go up. Well, no, they don't. I've yet to see where they do. And if they do, it's so minuscule, it's hard to say that's the one variable that made
Right.
your Csa scores better this year than something else. So I don't know. I'm not an inward facing camera fan. I as far as I'm concerned, we'll never have them, right?
That's good.
But I can see where people can make the argument the same for that they can for the collision mitigation system.
What it comes down to, in my opinion, it doesn't matter how many safety features you put on these trucks.
Okay.
You still got a human being in that vehicle making the decisions. Even though that sensors going off on the left side that you're too close to the line. If you keep pulling the wheel to the left, you're going to the left. That sensor is not stopping you. It's just warning you. So all of these things are great, fine, and well, but it comes down to the driver, the person who's behind the wheel controlling that vehicle.
Right.
And the decisions that they make, even though they have all of these security things or the safety things in place, that driver can still err outside of the margins that the sensors work and cause an issue, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally feel it's the person in the seat.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, as long as your hiring practices are strong, you know, and that you hire people with good safety records, with good professional skills, you know, I think that's the best, I guess, medicine that you can have against accidents. So talking to you about this, so what do you think makes you safe? What do you think, what keeps you engaged? Because for me, right, if I were driving down the road and I was having to go 500 miles in a day, I would be catatonic, right? How do you stay engaged that whole trip? How do you do it?
Well, you get used to it, for one. You get conditioned to it. Okay. I mean, you do. When we first started driving over the road, you know, we used to run 3,000 miles cross country, one trip. It wasn't 500, change it to another truck, 500, change it to another truck. Mm-hmm. We ran the whole load from sea to shining sea. Well, you knew you had a long trip. You had a deadline to get it there. You know, so how do you stay engaged? Well, you have to condition yourself. But it's no different than running local either. You condition yourself. You be aware of your surroundings. It still comes down to the guy in the seat, or the person in the seat rather, whether it be a man or a woman, you know. But a lot of it too also has to do with attitude. You know, you show up for work and you're in a bad mood, you're gonna have a bad day. You started it off wrong. You know, whether it be you were having issues at home, you had worried about your house, worried about, you know, some idiot that cut you off on the way to work. You know, you gotta let all that stuff go, because when you get in that truck and you start pulling an 80,000-pound vehicle down the road, not only is it your safety that could be jeopardized, but there's a whole lot of people around you can affect, and especially doing the stuff that we do. You know, anytime you start working with hazmat, you then increase the danger and the possibility of danger. So it comes down to the driver and their attitude. You know, brush the dirt off, relax, get rid of the stress, then do your job. You'll be a lot happier, be a lot safer.
Right.
You know.
Mm-hmm. That's easier said than done.
It is.
Yeah.
But it's a conditioning. You can, if you practice it, you know, it's like, you know, there's different breathing practices you can use. Or take a deep breath in, you breathe all this clean air into your system, and you're going to blow all the bad air out. And if you got to yell to get it out, you know, that's what you do. You do it 4 or 5 times. Don't worry, if you pass out and hit the floor, you're still going to be in a better mood when you wake up. So, you know.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good one. I'll have to remember that.
Sometimes you just got to get out and yell it out. You know, that's what I'm saying. I mean, if that doesn't work, find something that does work for you. Maybe you just need to stop and get out and walk around a truck a few times, clear your head. Maybe you just need to stop and think about something that has nothing to do with work or family or anything that's going on, whatever's irritating you, just to clear your head for a minute. Because if you got a bad attitude when you show up for work, you're behind the wheel, it's going to show in the decisions that you make driving down the road. And that's going to affect not only you, but now it affects the general public, it affects your employer, it affects your scores. It's just a trickle-down effect that everything is now incorporated in it.
Yeah. So what do you think about Csa scores, since we're on that topic? Do you look at your Csa scores? Do you know what they are?
I haven't checked mine since I started working here.
Okay.
So I don't worry too much about it, but
yeah. It's a numbers game now.
It's when they first came out with it, they made it retroactive 3 years from the time it started.
Okay.
So if you had all these tickets and whatever, you were getting points to start. Well, then it falls off after so many years, and provided you don't acquire more. You know, that's just like all these safety things that they put in these trucks. What is it that's actually going to make it safer on the road? Giving us a score and disqualifying us as a driver, or affecting the insurance in a company, or the insurance as an owner-operator? How is that going to change the safety? Like you were just talking about that margin. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does affect it a bit, but in a grander scale, how does it really change it?
Yeah,
you know?
Right. Yeah. So going back to technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there any technology that's out there that we're not using that you think would be beneficial?
Every single one of us got a cell phone.
Okay.
We got computers in these trucks.
Yeah.
Here's the number one thing. Stop these phones. So many people are too busy texting or talking on the phone, but they don't want to.
But how do you do that?
They
How do you stop them, right?
you put a limit on it to where once you reach a certain speed, you can only receive a call. You can't text. It disables your phone.
Right.
You can't type into the Qualcomm system or the PeopleNet system. You can't do things on the computer. You have to be stopped in order to do it. Get rid of them cell phone use in the vehicles, period. That, I think, would make a big difference just all the way around, whether it be the trucking industry, whether it be the private, it would change a lot of things on the highway. Highways are amazing.
Yeah.
You think about the adventure you could take on a trip on the road. One of the worst things to see is somebody get hurt with this just amazing trails and roads and highways that can take you to anywhere. They can build dreams. They can, create a future, whatever you want. Why do you want to get out there and mess around with a phone or a computer and jeopardize your safety or someone else's?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, stop the cell phone thing.
Have you ever been in an accident?
One time.
One time.
Mm-hmm.
Was it your fault?
No, it was not. It was not.
Was it serious?
Thank God nobody got hurt.
Okay.
I was in Chicago. I was coming through Chicago out there by the airport, and I had 2 teenage kids that were drag racing down a 1-lane on-ramp. When they got to the bottom of the ramp, the one kid struck another car that was beside me. I was in the middle lane of 3, and he shoved the guy under my trailer. He came out from the first set of wheels. It had a split axle trailer, step deck, had a split axle with a box in the center. Mm-hmm. He hit the first axle, and that kicked him out. And then he hit the second axle, and that kicked him out. Now he's in the far right lane in Chicago, and he went from that lane all the way into the retaining wall, nose first. Walked away without a scratch.
Oh my gosh.
But thank God, the poor guy was on his way to work.
Right.
It did several $1,000s damage, had 3 flat tires, 2 busted rims. I wasn't going anywhere. 18-year-old kid who was the cause of the accident, admitted it to the cop.
Yeah.
We got all the insurance information, changed everything over.
Mm-hmm.
And then he came down to me. I'm standing there a little irritated with the whole situation. Thank God nobody got hurt. But then he asked me, do you know anything about cars? Well, yeah, I've got a couple of them. What do you want to know? Well, can you come look at my car and tell me if it's okay to drive it home? I said, really? How old are you, kid? 18 years old. I said, yeah, I've been out here longer than you've been alive, and until today I didn't have an accident until you came down that ramp. I said, you just need to go away. Just go back to your car or something happens to you. It was not a pleasant situation.
Yeah. But think about that. You've been driving for how long? How many years?
Over 30.
Over 30 years, and
Mm-hmm.
you've only had one accident.
One accident, and it was not my fault.
Yep.
But it was because someone else was being stupid.
Right.
But it could have been a tragic situation. The guy could have got killed. Somebody else could have got killed. Could have caused a major incident on the highway.
But that's an impeccable record. You've done well. You should be proud of that.
My whole outlook on it when I leave the house is I'm going to go out there and I'm going to conduct myself whatever I have to do safely to make sure that I go back home every night. When I drove truck over the road, make sure I always got back home. Mm-hmm. So if that means I have to slow down, I have to wait on this car to make the turn, I've got to take a little extra time. If there's one thing that the industry has taught me,
mm-hmm.
is patience.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have to wait. Hurry up and wait. You're going to have to wait. It's going to change no matter what
Mm-hmm.
you do. Inevitable. Patience. Just relax. Take a deep breath if you have to. Run around the truck if you have to. Take a few deep breaths and knock yourself out, pass out from, whatever you got to do. But you're the one who's in control of that truck.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's probably the most important thing that you've said today is you're in charge of that truck. Yeah. And no matter what, your dispatcher can't force you to do something. The customer can't force you to do something. They can ask you to do something, but at the end of the day, that's you, and you're in charge of that truck.
Right. And what
Mm-hmm.
you do is going to have an impact on the environment around you.
Right.
And everybody around you.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you got to make good decisions.
Right.
And sometimes that's tough. It is, especially when you got stress weighing on you. Maybe you got something going on at home. Maybe one of the kids has done something, or the car broke down. You got a flat tire on the way to work. It doesn't matter. You got to let all that stuff go, because when you get behind the wheel of that truck, you got to be on your game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure on drivers these days. It's customers, electronics. We know exactly where you're at, when you're at. We know if you turn it right. We know if you turn it left. We know if you're going to be on time. We know if you overslept. I mean, there's just so much micro management, right, these days, that and then you get to the customer, and the customer's mad because you're late, but it's not your fault that you're late. And, there's just so much that hits you at once. I just think there's a lot of pressure on you guys out there. I think people underestimate, how much pressure they're putting on drivers these days.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
But it's always been that way. All the changes in technology, all the changes in, the regulations that we have to follow, I always say it's probably because it's a derogatory way to put it, but some pencil pushing moron that's never been behind the wheel is up there making rules because somebody said it was a good idea.
Yeah.
Well, get out here in these trucks and see what it's like to have somebody cut you off, and you have to take drastic measures to avoid hurting yourself or killing somebody else. See what it's like to come out here and have to run through adverse weather conditions where you're driving by the seat of your pants. They're scary. You're right. There's a lot of stress.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys don't realize that dispatch can't force you to do it. That doesn't mean you have to be rude, but you have the right to say no.
Right.
They can't make you do these things. But a lot of people, especially that get into the industry not knowing the industry, they're intimidated by it. Dispatch says, I got to be there by a certain day, certain time. And then you get there and the guy says, well, you're 5 minutes late. Call me back tomorrow. Wait a minute. What?
Yeah. We ran into that when we were doing dry freight.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's notorious. You miss your appointment time, you're done. And you're going to sit there until the next day, and you're going to sit there for free.
Exactly. We're not paying you.
Right. Because you were late. 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, how you deal with that as the person behind the wheel, some people don't manage their time wisely. They get too caught up in other things, I can remember a time when we didn't have the cell phones and computers. Yeah, you spent a lot of time on the payphone. Well, that's time that you were supposed to be going down the road. But now we've got all this technology. But you deal with traffic. Traffic is worse. Drivers are they're not as good as what they used to be. There's so many people that are just careless when they drive. But that's part of the industry change when they deregulated it, and they said, well, it used to be you had to know somebody who was going to teach you how to drive a truck, and then you can go to a school and we'll teach you for 6 weeks to get your CDL. Now it's, well, we're just going to teach you the basics, and we're a third-party tester, and in 2 weeks you can have your CDL, and we guarantee you a job.
Yeah.
That doesn't guarantee quality drivers.
Yeah. So what do you think about driverless vehicles?
I'll stay off the road. I'll just stay away from it.
You're going to stay off the road?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
you think it's possible?
On our highway systems now, I think it's a bad idea. Again, the human error factor. So yeah, you got a driverless vehicle, but you got all these safety measures in place. But what's to say the guy driving alongside of this driverless vehicle doesn't run up under it? How do you prevent that from happening?
Yeah.
And somebody's going to say, well, it's because it was a driverless vehicle and there's a flaw in the system and it's no good. It's just like the technology we have now. Our cell phones don't always work. Our computers aren't always online. The technology in the truck can fail.
Right.
It's going to happen. So I don't think it's a good idea.
Okay.
But we were supposed to have flying cars by now anyways.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm intrigued by the idea. I just don't know how you would make a delivery with a load of liquid CO2 with a driverless vehicle. But you could potentially do a pipeline, where you go from Los Angeles to Omaha with a driverless vehicle. And when you hit Omaha, you do a local delivery.
I'm curious to see how that works out in adverse weather conditions.
Yeah. Exactly.
Driverless vehicle, can they make the judgment calls that we do?
Right.
You know, sometimes it's better to say, no, I'm not going. Driverless vehicle, somebody pushes a button and it goes.
Right. Yeah. I saw a PBS special on it one time. It was really kind of interesting because it was talking about where are we going to put all the displaced drivers when we go to driverless vehicles. And so they showed this control room, and it reminded me of the 911 center, if you've ever been in that, where, you know, you have all these people that are in there answering phone calls. And it was the same type of thing, but they were all in there, you know, and it was dark, and they had their computers, and they were actually, you know, maneuvering the trucks remotely. And so the concept was that the drivers in the vehicles are going to be the ones that they're going to have in this 911 center that basically maneuvers the vehicles. And so they'll be watching, and they'll see, you know, remote weather or inclement weather, and they'll shut the truck down, but it'll all be remote.
And it's still a subject to human error. How many of these vehicles are they controlling at one time? You know, what's to say the person behind the control makes the right decision? You still have the human error factor.
Except what you don't have is the lifestyle of the over-the-road truck driver, right? The difficulty of finding people that want to go from Los Angeles to Omaha to New York to San Francisco to, you know, without going home on 3 weeks at a time. That's kind of, you know, the idea, I think, that drives that type of development is the lack of, you know, drivers, or the driver shortage that everybody talks about.
You know, they were talking about driver shortage 30 years ago.
Yeah, I know.
So, you know, I mean, how far have we progressed in that time frame?
Right.
You know, I mean, I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah.
Let's see how it plays out.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll be any safer. It will in some respects. Like you mentioned, now you don't have to worry about finding that driver to go there. But what about the ones that do it? You know, but now the way the industry's changed, anybody with 2 weeks that they want to spend getting a CDL can go get a CDL. And for that matter, you don't even have to do that. You can go down to any DMV, get the book, go down and take the tests.
Yeah.
You know, rent a vehicle, get a friend who has a CDL to help you out, and you got your license. You can probably do it in less than 2 weeks. You know.
And that's no different than it was 30 years ago, right?
Well, no,
I mean, I can't begin to tell you how many people we've had on this podcast where I say, how'd you get started?
Right.
Right? And it's like, well, I got started, you know, shagging trailers around. And then I went down and I took my, you know, license. I took my test, you know, or, you know, I worked for my dad and I drove over the road and I finally went and got my CDL at a later date. I mean, it happened all the time in the olden days.
But they had to be taught. Somebody taught them how to, you know.
They did, yeah.
It wasn't like it is now where you're not learning anything about that road if you just go down to a school or go to the DMV and get your license.
Right.
You know, my brother's a prime example of that. Okay, my brother wanted to get his CDL and wanted to drive years ago, and the guy that he was supposed to work for didn't have a truck available for him. So I was an owner operator at the time, and I said, okay, come with me. And I talked to the guy, says, I'll just take him with me and keep him on the truck until you have a truck available. Well, we went out and we ran, and, you know, we did it for 4 or 5 months. And when we finally got done, he says, you know, he says, it just amazes me. He says, I learned more riding around with you than they taught me in the books, than they taught me in the school, any of that.
Right.
Because there's so much out there that's not in a, you know, between 2 book covers to tell you how to do it, what to do, what to look for. You know, it's firsthand experience. But nowadays we can't afford to do that because a lot of your older drivers, they're tired of this, and the industry has changed so much, and they don't agree with a lot of the policies and a lot of these safety measures and the rules changes. They just want to get out. You know, there's still a lot that keep doing it, but the way the industry is changing, you don't have the owner operators out here like we used to.
No, you don't.
The revenue is not what it used to be. You know.
Yeah. So just out of curiosity, and fast forward to what you're doing today, right? You're currently running CO2
Correct.
for Air Products in Council Bluffs under the LGT flag.
Right.
And so I was, you know, one of the things that I thought about asking you today was just, well, we touched on it, is training. So when you first learned how to haul CO2 for Air Products, you went through a training program with them at Air Products, correct?
Yes.
So how was that training? What was that training like? I mean, was it 6 weeks, 8 weeks? Did you sit and ride in a truck? I mean, How did that go?
Well, I didn't sit and ride in the truck. I mean, I drove the truck.
Okay.
You know, I had a trainer with me. I had a couple of different trainers, nice guys, you know.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know if you recall, Air Products had made a change in their practices right at that time. So some of the trainers were not up on the new practices, and I was learning it just as fast as they were learning it. So we were all trying to teach each other what was going on.
Okay.
You know, but as far as the training, if I remember, it was like 4 or 6 weeks.
Okay.
I think it was, and it really depended from what I was told on the person how well you caught on. Well, I had previous tanker experience and dealing with stuff like that, so it made it easier for me to catch on in some respects than it would somebody who didn't. It'd be really intimidating dealing with a tank. But the trainers were all very insightful, and they, you know, tell you what you need to know and let you make your mistakes as long as you didn't make too big a mistake. There's some you can make and some you can't, obviously, you know, to try to learn and get you into a routine and develop that routine so that you're doing it on a regular daily basis, you know. But I'd say the training was good.
But similar to the experience that you had with your brother, where you were taking him out and showing him different experiences, right? That's one of the things that I always thought was really helpful for somebody that was just learning how to do cryogenics is, you know, take them out to a high pressure tank. Mm-hmm. Take them out to one that has a ground pump. Take one out that has 2 tanks manifolded together, 2 tanks that are separate, right? I mean, just a whole bunch of variety of different experiences, I think help make the training a little bit more thorough than, you know, just the textbook type of.
Yeah, you can't, because textbooks are always good. The textbook doesn't cover everything.
Right.
You're going to run into a situation where you've got a tank that's a high pressure and it needs to be blown down before you can load product into it. Somebody's might go get on the phone and say, well, what do I do? It's sitting at this pressure, or I already hooked up and I did this and it's not working. Well, why isn't it working? Well, because they didn't have that experience. So the textbook doesn't cover it all. So yes, you're right. You need to have firsthand experience, or have someone who, through your training, is saying, hey, these are things you need to look out for. And it can be overwhelming. It can be a lot of information all at once. But if you hear it once or twice by somebody who's kind of explaining, this is what happens, this is why it happens, this is what we do to correct the situation, mm-hmm. and then this is what we do to then get done what we need done, that's going to stick in your head. And maybe later on down the line, that same guy will come across the tank that's way too high in pressure and go, oh, that's right, I got to blow it down. That's why it's not working. Now, he may hook it all up and have the same problem that he had, but instead of getting on the phone, he's going, okay, this is why, this is what I need to do, because he heard it. Somebody gave him that insight. It wasn't in the book, right. Because every one of these places are different. You know, the temperature outside can affect a lot of these things. Mm-hmm. You know, the driver's, whether he's having a bad day or not, you know, mm-hmm. doing something that he shouldn't have done. I mean, I've made my own mistakes, but thankfully they weren't bad mistakes, but there were ones that I was like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, you know. Mm-hmm. But you learn.
Right.
You know.
Right. So Air Products has a Moby.
Oh.
Right? So this is my last thing to talk about with you today is the Moby Device.
The Moby Device.
Because, and the reason why I want to bring this up is that now other shippers are moving in that direction. So, mm-hmm. like Messer has just come out with a new device too.
Okay.
And they're issuing phones, and it's the same type of concept. So I think one of the, you know, going back to our earlier discussion about pressures is now these days you have paperwork to fill out because mm-hmm. the DOT does require that you have a paper copy.
Right.
Okay. So then you have a phone, an iPhone issued to you from Air Products because you support Air Products, and it's called the Moby Device. And you get your dispatch on the Moby Device, and you have to fill out all the stuff on the Moby.
Correct.
And then when you're done with that, then you have to go to LGT, right? And LGT has a drive axle.
Drive axle, yeah.
And so then the next thing you have to do is you have to do this the third time, right? You fill it out on paper, you fill it out on Moby, and now you go to drive axle, and you've got to fill it out on drive axle. Mm-hmm. And to me, all those things are just so redundant. And
I agree.
And overwhelming.
I have a cell phone. You have a cell phone. He's got a cell phone. We've all got these cell phones.
Yes.
The Moby is a cell phone.
Yes.
That has an app on it.
Yes.
It's a secured app because it's password secured.
Yes.
Why do I have to have a whole nother phone device that I've got to carry around with me for an app that is password secured? Now I've got 2 devices because I'm taking my cell phone with me. Why? Well, they don't want us using the cell phone for a lot of things.
Right.
It's for an app. You're right. Redundant.
Yes.
I got it all right there.
Yeah.
You know, filling out all the extra paperwork. Yeah, but you know what? There's some things that it's just the job. Whether you agree with it or not, it really doesn't matter. You're asked to do the job.
Right.
So just do it.
I agree. I'm hoping someday we're able to merge all those things together. I'm hoping one day that, just like electronic logs, when a DOT officer stops you, you can pull out your tablet and you can show me a bill of lading, so you don't have to have it in paper form anymore. I'm hoping someday that you don't have to have a Moby and a cell phone for LGT, that somehow Air Products and LGT can come together and do something together. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, that would be nice, because I loathe my Moby.
Yeah.
So.
Well, on that note, Melvin, I want to thank you for being here today, talking about a variety of subjects, but definitely technology. It's always good to get a driver's perspective on what's happening with technology. Sometimes I think we forget. We think, oh, this is a great idea, and we forget somebody really has to use that. So it's always nice to get a different perspective. So thank you for being here today.
Well, I appreciate you having me. Thank you very much.
And that's a wrap on this episode of Driver Stories. Make sure to check out our website on lgttransport.com for more information about the show and LGT Transport. You can also find us on social media and let us know what you think of our podcast. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Driver Stories.